lecture. So with that being said, I am going to get started. It's 1:03. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Nice to see some cameras on. Always good to see your faces. I'm going to do things a little bit differently today. I've never done this before, but something I mentioned to my kids almost every practice, maybe not every practice, but almost every practice. Jennifer's a mom in our program, so she spent a lot of time in our gyms before COVID anyways. And it's something that I say almost every day is I repeat the 5 things that are most important to me as a coach and what I expect from my players. I developed this list about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's something that I've always maintained as being really important to me. Number one, I say I want my players to get a little bit better every time they come to practice. Get better at something, even in the smallest of way. Our program's a skill development program, so the thing that's most important to me is improvement, right? So number one, improve. Number 2, I say leave your comfort zones both mentally and physically. That's something very important to me. I'm a strong believer that you can't grow with comfort. You only grow with discomfort. And I remind my players that they have to challenge themselves physically to the point of exhaustion. I want them to feel like they want to quit and push through it. And from a mental standpoint, I want them to be so locked in mentally that their brain is even more tired than their body. I want them to challenge their comfort zones, both mentally and physically. Number 3, we say outwork them at Steady Buckets. That's our program mantra. But to me, outwork them really means work so hard that you feel proud of yourself. I want my players to work so hard during a basketball practice that they feel proud of themselves when they leave the gym. If you don't feel proud of yourself, you could have worked harder. And what I like about that is nobody can tell you if you're proud of yourself or not. It's an internal feeling. It's an internal measure that you can only decide for yourself. No one can tell me if I outworked them or not. I know in my heart, right? And I might say I outworked them, but I know in my heart I didn't. I got to live with that. Number 4, I say have fun. It's basketball. I want you to have fun. And number 5 is make friends. Make new friends and strengthen existing friendships. All right. I try to live my life by those 5 things. That's something I learned when I started it. It was more about my coaching philosophy and getting kids to buy into what I expect from them as players. And one thing that I've always been aware of, I've been coaching I was coaching summer camps when I was in high school and college, but I've been coaching as an adult for about 12 years. And when I first started coaching, I realized how much better I became as a player by coaching. And that's because something important to me, part of my character, is to not be a hypocrite. So when you coach, it's important that you do the things that you actually tell a 10-year-old to do. If I tell a 10-year-old basketball player to box out and then I go and play in a men's league that night, I better box out. Otherwise, I'm a hypocrite. I'm expecting more from a 10-year-old than I expect for myself. And that's something I can't live with. So I very much became a better player by being a coach solely because I held myself to a higher standard. I had this voice in my head telling me that I better do the same thing that I'm telling the kids to do. All right. And I try to apply that to those 5 checkpoints. I try to live my life in a way that I feel like I'm always getting a little better at the things that I'm doing. I try to purposefully leave my comfort zones on a regular basis, both mentally and physically, probably more mentally than anything these days. Less of an athlete and more of a leader and communicator. So I challenge myself to leave my comfort zones mentally on a regular basis. I try to work so hard that I feel proud of myself. All right. And I try to have fun while doing so. And I try to make friends along the way. I've been doing this lecture series for over 30 weeks now. My intention was not to do it this long. And I got to be honest, there are pretty much every week, I feel like writing the folks at Perks at Work and Next Jump and saying, hey guys, I need the week off. Really don't want to do it this week. Don't know what I'm going to talk about, kind of out of material. And then I take a look at my checklist and I say, well, I can't get better if I take the week off. I'm not leaving my comfort zone. In fact, I'm staying comfortable. I'll watch a little more TV during the week than prepare for this lecture series. I won't feel proud of myself. In fact, I'll feel regret. I'll feel guilty. I'll feel lazy and I'll feel shame. I won't have fun. All right. And I do have fun. I always thank you all for coming because I do enjoy these hours together we spend on Thursday. And I won't strengthen the friendships that I've built with someone like Jennifer, who I've known for years, but I feel like I'm getting closer to through these parenting classes. And then, especially those of you who have your camera on, Taj is doing our small group workshop. And I feel like I have a friend on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean based on the time we're spending together. So, I feel good about myself anytime I'm doing something in life where I check those 5 boxes. And I was thinking about, like I said, to be 100% honest, I'm running out of material. I don't know what to share every week. And whenever I don't know what to do, I kind of throw my thoughts up against those 5 principles. And I realize I want to do something this week that falls into those 5 categories. All right. I also think about what do we want our kids, and how do we lead our children, whether you're a teacher or a coach or a parent. And a lot of it is, I always think about how difficult kids' lives are. All right. I think as adults, we tend to emphasize how difficult our lives are. And no doubt we have a lot on our plates. We work, we cook, we clean, we take care of our kids, and we have a lot of responsibility. But children have very little free time. They wake up, they go to school, they have very little choice over what they do during school. To be honest, I think most people who work in an office setting have more water cooler time, cigarette break time, chit chat time. Students tend to bounce from one class to the next. They have very busy days during school. Then they have an after school activity. They get picked up, they eat, they do homework for hours, and then they go to bed and they do it all over again. All right. So children have a very demanding life. All right. As do we as adults. Life isn't supposed to be easy. But I think about the challenges that kids go through. And I think it's important that when we challenge our kids, for instance, this is kind of where my head is at. Sometimes parents will say, they'll kind of sarcastically see their child not working as hard as other kids, and they'll joke to me, or out of frustration say, look at my lazy kid out there not doing the drill correctly. And I either think it in my head, or if I know the parent well enough, I call them out on it and I say, you couldn't make it 15 minutes out there. The warm up we do at Steady Buckets is so challenging that I don't think you could get through the warm up. All right. But sometimes my point being, sometimes we don't appreciate how hard our kids are working. And I think it's an important thing to appreciate how hard our kids are working. And a great way to appreciate how hard they are working is to make sure that you're consistently working hard yourself, and that you're holding yourself to the same standards that you hold your children to. So whatever it is that you expect them to do, don't be a hypocrite. Do it yourself. Thinking about how that relates to me this week and what I wanted to prepare, I felt like going deep into leaving my comfort zone. My comfort zone is talking off the top of my head. What I'm doing right now, freestyling, having a conversation. Actually, there's always a temptation when I don't know what to teach during these lectures. There's always a temptation to say, I'm just going to do a Q&A session. Meaning, if you guys don't have anything to ask, I don't have anything to say. Because my strength is taking your question and giving you an answer and freestyling a topic, maybe even disagreeing with myself and talking myself in circles. But being able to react to questions is something that I do very comfortably. Something that I do very uncomfortably is what I'm going to do today. Since a child, I struggled with reading. They didn't diagnose things so readily when I was younger, but no question, I have some sort of ADD and dyslexia. I couldn't really read until my adult life. My parents read me textbooks throughout my childhood. No way I would have made it through high school and got to college without their help. So reading has always been very difficult for me. And my biggest fear as a child, and to some degree still now, is reading out loud. I hate reading out loud. So today I'm going to read out loud for a significant portion of this lecture. I let you all know over the last month or so, one of the things I'm challenging myself with is to write a book. We'll see if I actually finish it. One of our gyms just opened up. I'm going to have less free time than I've had over the last year, but I am committed to continue to work on it. And I put some significant work into writing this week. And I am going to present some of the same thoughts from last week, but hopefully a little more clearly, kind of a condensation of a lot of the thoughts we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, really revolving around choice. We do a small group workshop. Taj and Jennifer are a part of it. And we talk about some of the things that I talk about on Thursday. We go into more depth and into their own more personal examples. And with that, what I love about it, and I told them from the beginning, selfishly, is I love to, to me, thinking about these situations of developing toughness and parenting is challenging in the abstract. But when you think about it as a specific person, as in Jennifer's son or Taj's 3 teenage sons, it becomes more real and the conversation becomes more meaningful, and it leads me to more creative thought and kind of puts me in a position where, again, I feel like I'm getting better. I'm leaving my comfort zone. I'm having fun. I'm doing something that makes me feel proud of myself if I'm able to help any one of you. All right. And I'm creating those relationships that, to me, is what life is all about. So, with no further ado, I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to read something that I've been working on since Monday, really on the topic of choice. And what I'm asking for you guys is, what we'll do is I'll read. I don't know how long it's going to take, maybe 15 minutes or so. And then tell me your thoughts, ask questions. What made sense to you? What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? And as always, we will spend the last 15, 20 minutes of the class with Q&A. If no one has questions, then we'll just end a little early. But that's okay too. So I'm going to jump right into what I wrote and look forward to hearing your thoughts. The last thing I want to say before I forget, I don't get a lot of feedback on the feedback app, which is fine. But I never really make much of an ask to get feedback. I would love to get a little extra feedback this week, doing something a little different, not just on the content of what I'm writing, but did you like this form of the lecture? Usually I give you some videos or something a little more visually stimulating. Sometimes I give you slides. It'd be great to hear if you enjoy what I do today, which is basically I wrote a chapter in my one day, hopefully to be published book, and I'm going to present this chapter. And if this is a style of lecture that you guys enjoy, then I can make a goal personally to try to knock out a chapter every week and have the pressure of Thursday is coming and I got to get to work and make sure I got a chapter to read to you. If you don't like it and you prefer my presentations when they're filled with videos and more of a freestyle approach, I'd love to hear that too, because ultimately on Thursdays, I want to give you all what you want and have you walking away feeling like it was well spent hour of your time. So anyways, I'll jump right into what I have prepared. And the title of the chapter is The Importance of Giving Your Child Choice in Helping Them Develop Self-Confidence and Becoming Decision Makers, or Empowering Your Child. One way to think about child development is the amount of choice a child is trusted to make. When a child is young, they traditionally have little opportunity for choice, and as they grow, those opportunities grow as well. The primary purpose of a parent, teacher, or coach is to become unnecessary. By passing down wisdom and presenting opportunities of choice, we help our children build the confidence needed to make well-informed, morally virtuous decisions that will lead them to success and happiness. Infants, when they are first born, have zero choice. They are 100% reliant on their caretakers and act instinctually. Yet from the first moment they express desire, they are subconsciously beginning the process of expressing choice and becoming decision makers. At a very young age, babies practice and express choice when they reject their bottle, throw a toy, or say the word no. As children grow up, they little by little express more of their opinion, develop more of their individuality, and develop a sense of power in knowing who they are, what they like, what they want, and how they choose to express themselves. In every choice a child makes, she is practicing decision-making, strengthening independence, and developing character. Most importantly, with every choice she makes, she is gaining experience and learning more about herself. This self-awareness is critical to empowerment and self-confidence, and yet as parents, teachers, and coaches, we often take away our child's ability to choose, missing out on precious opportunities for their growth. One of the most common areas of concerns that parents express for their children is a lack of self-confidence. They see other fearless children in the playground or on the athletic field and wonder why their child lacks those abilities to take risks. Those same children who thrive in some areas shrink to a lesser self when overwhelmed by different, less comfortable environments. We all have strengths and weaknesses, places we thrive and places we lack courage. I answer the question, how can I help my child become more confident? By presenting what I call the catch-22 of developing confidence, which is to gain confidence, we need experience. To gain experience, we need to take action. To take action, we need to overcome fear. To overcome fear, we need to take risk. And to take risk, we need confidence. By reversing the cycle, we see that without confidence, we fail to take risk. Without taking risk, we fail to overcome fear. Without overcoming fear, we fail to take action. Without taking action, we fail to gain experience. And without experience, we fail to gain confidence. And so, something has to give in order for a child with low confidence, little experience, who shies away from action and is overcome with fear to start taking risk. For the child who lacks confidence and for the parents who are struggling to help, it's a self-defeating cycle that feels overwhelming and impossible to crack. What's worse is over time, the cycle becomes stronger and the barriers to develop self-confidence become more and more overwhelming. But there is a weakness in the cycle that is to be exploited. That is through taking action. And what is action other than making a decisive choice and practicing purposeful, independent thought? Parents often confuse action with motion or participation, but when the choice to participate is made for a child, she is actually not taking action, but being propelled into motion by an outside force. Practicing independent choice is what creates momentum towards confidence, and it can be practiced hundreds, if not thousands of times every day in the simplest and seemingly inconsequential ways. For the child, by being more self-aware of the choices she makes, and for parents, simply by giving their children time and space they need to make their own choices. In every walk of life, the highest functioning people make decisions with speed and accuracy. Lesser functioning people make decisions with either high speed and low accuracy or high accuracy and low speed. Lower performing people make decisions with slow speed and low accuracy. And still, the lowest functioning people avoid decision making at all costs and can be described as a leaf blowing in the wind, taking no control of their circumstances and remaining completely reliant on others, becoming or remaining powerless, much like the newborn child who hasn't yet learned to reject a bottle. Speaking of the infant, when she first pushes away her bottle, throws her toy, or says no, she expresses choice, but in a limited form, being unable to express what she wants, but only what she does not want. However, as children grow up and they enter the complexities of the world around them, children gain the self-awareness and communication skills needed to express more detailed preferences. At this point in their development, children begin to learn the skill of decision making and simply need practice in order to improve. What often holds them back and limits their growth is the lack of practice, often due to their parents, teachers, and coaches continuing to limit their choices in an attempt to avoid the inevitability that their children will be low performing decision makers, being either slow, inaccurate, or both. When a child takes too long, parents, teachers, and coaches often grow impatient and take away a child's opportunity to practice choice. Stop for a second and think why children take so long to decide on what often seems so meaningless to the adult. It's because the child has few opportunities to choose and that she puts too much stake in every decision she is presented with. Her indecisiveness often leads to the adult stepping in and taking away her choice, which only makes the opportunity to make choice more rare and more valuable. By simply waiting a few extra seconds or allowing the child to flip-flop in her decision-making process, the parent allows the child to become more accustomed to having choice, which will develop into speed as the opportunities continue to be provided. With speed comes more opportunity, more practice, and with more practice comes more accuracy. Likewise, when a child chooses incorrectly, the adult often jumps in to help, in quotations, help, and again takes away their child's opportunity to choose. Through well-intentioned attempts to speed up or correct children, adults are taking away what matters most in developing confidence, and that is the child's ability to take action independently. What's worse, when children are given little opportunity for choice, they look for ways to prove their independence in perverse ways, which often leads to the rejection of reason to the detriment of their own self-interest. These ill-timed demonstrations of independence lead to harm, which leads to fear, a lack of future risk-taking, and ultimately less experience, less confidence, less action, and a tighter grip of the stalled growth by the catch-22 of developing confidence. Said another way, the less decisions that a child gets to make, the worse their ability to make decisions will become, and the more they will avoid choice altogether. And yet the lacking desire to make, choices will not replace the child's desire to prove their independence, and so the child will often purposefully go against her own self-interest purely to prove that she has the ability to do so while avoiding the choices that align with what she really wants. For years, coaching youth basketball, and specifically the fundamentals of the jump shot, I puzzled desperately to figure out why my players would avoid my advice and instead insist on shooting their shot. One year at an annual summer camp, I made 97 out of 100 jump shots during a shooting demonstration, and yet the majority of campers continued to ignore the fundamentals that I was teaching them. These children all came to camp aspiring to become more skilled players, and yet they resisted the wisdom and experience that was being presented. In frustration, I wondered how this could be, and yet I so vividly remembered doing the exact same thing in my youth. I remained puzzled until stumbling across an excerpt from Fyodor Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground, in which the author writes, "What is to be done with the millions of facts that bear witness that men, consciously, that is fully understanding their real interest, have left them in the background and have rushed headlong on another path to meet peril and danger, compelled to this course by nothing and by nobody, but as it were, simply disliking the beaten track? To have obstinately, willfully struck out another difficult, absurd way, seeking it almost in the darkness. So I suppose this obstinacy and perversity were pleasanter to them than any advantage. The fact is, gentlemen, it seems there must really exist something that is dearer to almost every man than his greatest advantages. One's own free, unfettered choice, one's own caprice, however wild it may be, one's own fancy, worked up at times to frenzy, is the very most advantageous advantage. What man wants is simply independent choice, whatever that independence may cost or whatever it may lead. For the whole work of man really seems to consist in nothing but proving to himself every minute that he is a man and not a piano key." Since reading the above passage, I began inserting choice into my coaching techniques, eliminating any drill that gave players absolutely no opportunity to practice individuality. This doesn't mean that they were left to do things with no regard to proper technique. In fact, by inserting choice into activities allows the parent, teacher, or coach to more forcefully insist on areas where things must be done with precise attention to form and detail. An example is a drill I named Kobe, Steph, Clay shooting. While Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson have many similarities in their shooting techniques, they do distinctly different things with their non-shooting hand. Kobe keeps his offhand flat and flicks it towards the basket. Steph hinges his wrist backwards, almost pointing his palm to the ceiling, and Klay keeps his guide hand locked and stabs upwardly, seemingly piercing the sky. In presenting these differences, I explained the drill in which a young player alternate trying all three styles of shooting. After 5 to 10 minutes of alternating styles, the child is allowed to choose which of the three they want to implement while shooting their shot. They get to choose which of the three they like most. This permission to make a choice in their technique and maintain a level of independence allows me to more forcefully insist that they keep their hips square, their spine straight, and their follow-throughs held high. Once choice is amplified throughout the child's day, it is our responsibility as parents, teachers, and coaches to help them become high-performing decision makers by both improving the speed at which a child makes their decisions and her ability to be accurate in making the correct choice. On the basketball court, I take a similar approach to teaching ball handling. To become an elite player, practicing isn't enough. The player must stress her comfort zones, both mentally and physically, to ensure that her practice doesn't simply maintain her skill level, but her ability to consistently expand. Much like decision making, the quality of a ball handler can be broken down into two abilities: the ability to be fast and the ability to stay in control. The best ball handlers combine speed and control at high levels, while the lesser player is either fast and prone to mistakes or careful and always in control but slow. The still lesser player is slow and prone to mistakes. And like with decision making, the weakest players avoid ball handling altogether, limiting their ability to impact the game while also limiting their ability to improve. To address speed and control on the basketball court, I use two styles of drills that I call perfection drills and impossible drills. The challenge of a perfection drill, usually 3 minutes long, is for the player to make zero mistakes. In a perfection layup drill, the player is challenged to make every shot while maintaining the highest speed possible without forfeiting any quality in terms of result. Conversely, in a 3 minute impossible drill, the player is challenged to go so fast and work themselves to exhaustion in a manner that making every shot becomes impossible. If the player fails to miss, she is doing the drill incorrectly. With ball handling, a perfection drill challenges the player to dribble with control, performing a challenging skill like dribbling behind her back or through her legs, but at a speed where she is trying to mess up as little as possible or ideally not at all. With an impossible drill, the player is tasked with speeding up to an extreme that forces her to practice outside of her abilities and mess up after 5 to 10 repetitions. If she is able to achieve more than 10 consecutive reps without a mistake, she is doing the drill incorrectly. By focusing on perfection, quality, or impossible, quantity, drills in extremes, we are preparing the players to find the edges of their abilities so that they can ultimately play at game speed, or a level where mistakes are rare but inevitable because they are playing at the outer limits of their speed capabilities while still putting an emphasis on control. A similar approach can be made in developing high-level decision makers. Now that we've established the importance of choice and how only with choice can a child truly take action, it is our responsibility to help them make choices with speed and accuracy. As with layups or ball handling, the challenge is to eventually balance speed and control, and so here we too must practice in extremes. Imagine the families whose morning routine is to wake up at 7 a.m. so that everyone in the household can wash up, dress, eat breakfast, pack up, and be out the house by 8 a.m. Applying perfection/impossible philosophy into their morning routine would mean purposefully oscillating between waking up at 6:45 a.m., 7 a.m., and 7:15 a.m. On a perfection morning, the family wakes up 15 minutes early and has the ability to slow down. Everything about their morning routine is done with less speed and more attention to detail. Breakfast is made from scratch, and children are responsible for clearing the table and washing the dishes. Shirts are tucked in and shoes are carefully tied. The goal as a family unit is to move with careful consideration to every detail that makes for a perfect morning. Nothing is forgotten, and every second is used with care and precise attention to detail. On an impossible morning, the family wakes up 15 minutes late at 7:15 a.m. and everything is rushed. There is simply too much to do and not enough time. While the family hurries to do what they can, dishes are often left uncleared, beds unmade, and children often leave the house with their shoes on the wrong foot. Everyone in the family is forced to decide with speed which parts of their morning ritual to attend to and which to ignore. It's sloppy by design, but within the chaos are countless opportunities to make split-second choices. By giving children permission to move slowly, we encourage them to move with accuracy. By giving children permission to be sloppy, we encourage them to move with speed. A similar approach can be taken with academics. Imagine a child reading for perfection with attention to detail, comprehension, but then reading at an impossible speed, trying to improve her record on how fast she can finish a page of text, even if some of the content is missed. Or oscillating from doing one math problem in 3 minutes with perfect notation, using graph paper and neatly placing each number in a square and double or even triple checking her work, to then solving problems at a mad pace, accepting sloppiness, but pushing the extreme of speed to complete as many problems as she can in 3 minutes, in a 3-minute mathematical sprint. The goal of working at such extremes would be to master the ability to work at game speed when it matters most on a standardized test, where the child must combine speed with accuracy to ensure finishing every problem with as much care and precision as possible. Another benefit of this strategy is is it gives room for choice in that a parent or teacher can ask the child, how would you like to start your math homework today? With perfection or impossible style? The question leads to a more agreeable response as opposed to the rigidity of a more traditional authoritarian command of time to do your math homework. By inserting the smallest amount of choice into an undesirable task, the child maintains a degree of power, and the result is that of a compromise. In other common instances, the parent versus child disagreement, in other common instances of parent versus child disagreements, imagine the difference between insisting a child eat broccoli and giving them the choice between broccoli, green beans, or spinach. Think of the child who rejects bundling up for cold weather, being able to choose between which of their sweaters they wear, or the choice between layers or a heavy coat. Think of a student who struggles to read, being given her own choice of book. And think of the child who tunes out her parents, who insist on having a serious talk, getting to choose which adult in her life will deliver the message, where to have the conversation, and when. In delivering a difficult message or having a serious conversation, failing to give children choice ultimately leads to your voice as a parent falling on deaf ears. I often use the analogy of a tree falling in the forest. When no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Likewise, for parent, teachers, or coaches who make passionate speech, eloquently sharing wisdom with virtuous intentions and well-delivered and carefully considered language to a child who isn't listening. Does their speech make an impact? The answer, of course, is no, and so more attention and thought must be paid to why the child so readily resists wisdom. More specifically, we should consider where these messages are often delivered and how specific environments set us up to succeed or fail by physically limiting the child's choice and making them instinctually defensive. Over the course of my coaching career, parents have often remarked that their child listens to me and not to them, even though we are saying the exact same thing. The easy explanation is that the kids just don't want to hear from mom and dad. But on closer inspection, look at one key advantage that sport coaches have over parents and teachers. On the athletic field, the child is free to move in open space while the coach yells from the sideline. The game doesn't stop. The child chooses to listen or ignore while continuing to play. When provided the choice to listen or ignore, listening becomes the attractive choice. But when there is no choice to ignore, listening becomes instinctually less attractive. At the end of the game or practice, coaches often close with a meaningful final message. And while in these cases the child is forced to stand still and listen, there is an end in sight, knowing that the practice is over and the conversation can only last so long. Conversely, the car, the dinner table, and the bed and bedtime are three of the most common opportunities that parents take to have serious conversations with their children, and yet all three have in common the physical absence of choice for the child to leave. In the car, the child is buckled in. At the table, her legs are positioned under the table, and in the bed, the child is tucked under the sheets. In all situations, the child is trapped and unable to run away if she desires to do so. It's not that she will run, but that she can't escape that leads to a feeling of being trapped. And like all animals, when trapped, the child's fight or flight instincts kick in so they either become aggressively confrontational or shut down by becoming emotionally or mentally numb. Small adjustments to these situations can lead to giving the child more power and control in knowing that she can stay or go as she chooses. By initiating a serious conversation just minutes before dropping the child off at school allows the child to stay or go the moment the car comes to a stop. By beginning a heart-to-heart during dessert versus the beginning of a meal, again gives the child choice to exit and puts an end in sight. Limiting bedtime talks to short bursts of advice before a kiss goodnight makes for a more captivated audience and allows the child to ask for her parent to stay a little longer or let the parent leave the room. While initiating the conversation remains the choice of the parent, continuing the conversation becomes the choice of the child. Better yet, parents can flip the power dynamic altogether by seeking an environment where the child has freedom to move and an intrinsic option to end the conversation at any moment. One mom I speak to about parenting shared that her best heart-to-hearts with her 9-year-old son take place when she is in the bathtub. In these moments, she is the one who is trapped, and her child is the one who initiates and has the power to end the conversation. She came to realize that these are the moments when her words had the greatest impact. that's what I have prepared for you guys today. I know it's a lot of what we talked about last week, but hopefully a little more gathered and concise. And at this point, I'll open it up to question and answer. And I'm kind of off the hook in terms of doing what's difficult for me, which is reading out loud to a group of people. So hope you enjoyed it. Would love to hear feedback, whether you loved it or hated it. Either way, I can take it. In fact, I pride myself recently in becoming better at taking negative feedback. So if you didn't like it, let me hear it. If you did enjoy it, it's something that I would be willing to explore and continue to come at you with more thought out versions of my presentations, and more of a chapter of a book reading versus a freestyle with a couple of slides. But if you prefer the freestyle with the videos, I'm happy to do more of that, or maybe even a combination of both if I hear a mixed review. So anyways, that's what I have prepared for you guys today. And if anyone has any questions about anything I read or anything unrelated, I'm always happy to hear it. And just wave your hands in front of the screen or unmute yourself and we can proceed with Q&A.
It's Andrew Hunt. Sorry, it's not much of a question, but more of a comment. But I've never really thought about the whole choice. Like I coach soccer and baseball. Never really thought of it as much of a choice. I've always, these are the stations. You do this, then you do this one, and then you do this one. And each station, you're going to do A, B, then C. I've never, like I said, I've never really thought about it. I think it's a great idea and something I'll definitely, when fields start opening up again, work choice into it. Like, so do A, then B, and then you can either choose C or D. Just to help them with their growth. I think it's a great idea. So I thank you for it.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And what's fascinating to me, and what I learned over the years of coaching, is and it's in there, but I'll repeat it. By giving them choice, it's amazing how much better they react to the areas of the game where you won't give them choice, right? So what it gives you as a coach is and as a parent, there's some things where you get choice and there's other things that you do not get choice, right? But if there's no choice in anything, that's when it's almost like they're going to find ways to build choice into their actions. That's just human nature, even if it's against their own interests. So by giving no choice, what you end up with is bad choice, forced choice out of desperation, versus when you give them choice in some areas, it gives you so much more power as a coach or a parent to say, this right here is non-negotiable, right? So I use the example of the jump shot where I tell them they can do Kobe, Steph, or Clay. But now when I look at their feet and their feet are twisting, I say, no, your feet have to be straight. Because guess what? Kobe, Steph, and Clay all do the same thing with their feet. So let's give you choice in some of the shot, but not all of the shot. When coaching a team, right, we want the player with the ball to be creative. But if you're running a play, the person who's moving without the ball has to follow the script. So in American football, right, the quarterback has a lot of room for creativity, who they pass to, what fake they met. The receiver has no room for creativity, because there's certain things in life where if you have too much creativity, it leads to miscommunication and it leads to mistakes. So now for the receiver, once you have the ball, it's your world. Be creative. This is where you get to show off your flash. So it allows you to be more rigid in the things that demand rigidity, and by being more loose and allowing creativity and choice in areas where it either doesn't matter or, in fact, creativity is a strength. Because I think it's true about life in general. We have certain areas of our lives where creativity is very important, and other areas where creativity is a weakness. I like, one thing I describe in basketball is I say one of the really challenging things about basketball is you need both creativity and discipline. So the jump shot to me is a form of discipline, whereas ball handling is a form of creativity. And I like to explain it to kids almost like there's modern art. Think of a Jackson Pollock painting. That's ball handling. On the other hand, jump shooting is architecture. It's all about straight lines and precision. You can't be an architect with a Jackson Pollock paintbrush. the building will collapse, right? Architecture demands engineering. Engineering demands mathematics. Mathematics demands precision. Whereas abstract modern art demands free expression and creativity and individuality. The problem is it's the rare artist, right? Maybe the Picassos of the world that can do both. Or maybe I shouldn't say that, the greatest artists actually tend to have a background in tradition, right? So art schools and music schools, right? You have a jazz musician who their art is freestyle, improvisation. It doesn't mean that they're not an expert at reading music, right? You need the best people have the ability to be creative and disciplined. And my experience is when most kids, and actually I don't like to generalize, because some kids are the opposite of what I'm talking about. Some kids thrive when given little choice. Some kids like rules. I don't like this. I don't like basketball because it's too freestyle. I want to run track and field where it's very straightforward, that I run until I get tired and I go as fast as I can, and there's not a lot of expression. The child that thrives with rules needs to become better at being creative. The child that thrives with an imagination needs to get better at being disciplined, because the highest performing people in general have the ability to do both. And as parents and coaches, that's the thing that we should be preparing them for. The hardest thing about parenting and coaching, I find, is the same thing that's hard about being a player, is we all are so addicted to success. So when you're good at something, that's what you want to practice. People don't like to practice the things they're bad at. Parents also don't like to see their kids do things they're bad at. So if your kid has a great imagination, you probably enjoy watching them play jazz music or make a expressionist art piece, right? For a child who is more set on rules and regulations and doesn't have a great imagination, the parent is more likely to support their interest and have them do spelling bees or math competitions or find an architecture class and get them to do the things they're already good at, because it's so painful to watch our children fail. Coaches do it all the time. And in fact, it's to me, the worst thing that youth coaches do, and this is where winning versus developing very often contradict each other. And it's a problem when youth sports become too competitive, in my opinion. I'm actually a very competitive person. And I believe that there's value in competing at the right times. The problem is when winning is the most important thing, you fail to work on weaknesses. And when you're working with young athletes, I think you're doing them a disservice for their future, because, for instance, my first basketball coach, who I think highly of, he was a nice guy. He developed a love for the game with me, but he had a rule. We weren't allowed to shoot jump shots. And we won most of our games because we all mastered the layup and we pressed. So youth basketball, the thing that works is pressing defensively and only shooting layups. Professional basketball, pressing doesn't work. And the way to win championships in the modern NBA is to shoot a lot of three-pointers. So the exact thing that works in youth basketball does not work in professional basketball. By trying to, the best way to win as a kid is the best way to lose as an adult. And the problem is so many coaches are so focused on winning, they do their kids a disservice by trying to win at all costs and not developing the thing that's going to matter most when the child gets to high school, college, or professional. Similar to parenting and worrying about your child's in the moment happiness and catering to their strengths versus challenging them to work on their weaknesses, which is very sloppy and ugly and confrontational. And there might be tears and it might be stressful for the child and for the parent. But what comes out of it is a more resilient, tougher, well-balanced, agile adult who can be successful in any situation. So that's a whole nother topic. And in fact, the next chapter that I'm writing, because I think it transitions right into it, is something that we did do a class on. I don't remember when, but the concept of short-term happiness versus long-term success. And in fact, something that I spoke about during that class is I think every decision we make as people, whether it's a child making the choice or the parent making the choice, every decision falls into one or two categories: short-term happiness or long-term success. The best decisions qualify as both. They make us happy in the short term, they make us successful in the long term. The worst decisions, which I define as abusive, are neither. When it doesn't make you happy, it makes you miserable in the short term, and it doesn't help you in the future. To me, that's abusive decision, whether it's self-abuse or abuse put on the child, is when it neither satisfies short-term happiness or long-term success. So that's kind of the next way of thinking about choice with your kids or your players is, was that a choice that's good for you in the moment? Or is it a choice that's good for you in the future? If it's neither, it's a really bad decision. If it's both, it's a really good decision. And if it's one or the other, then just be aware of the trade-off that you're making, because you're getting some benefit, but you're also handicapping yourself in another way. Anyone else? Any questions? Any thoughts? I always like to do a 5-second timer. We don't have to stay till 2 o'clock. It's not a rule. Sometimes we go over, sometimes we go under. So I'll do my traditional 5-second shot clock if anyone has.
I just wanted to say I actually liked the session today, and it'd be nice to do it every few weeks, because it was a consolidation of everything we've done in the last sort of 3-4 weeks, and it brings it all back together and reminds you. So I actually quite enjoyed it, because it reminded me of things that we had discussed a few weeks ago, and the consolidation is a good thing. So I enjoyed it.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Taj. That makes sense. I try to pride myself on doing something different every week. That just might be my own ego getting in the way of, and that's kind of a common theme in parenting and coaching is, are you doing what's best for the audience or best for yourself, or what is, I'm always aware of, I like to think about what drives us to a decision, and what that makes me think of is, why do I feel the need to do something different every single week? To me, that's when you can identify a decision being processed by the ego. I think it's usually, not always, but sometimes, or usually, a bad decision. And what that makes me think is, I try not to talk about the same thing. I do challenge myself to do something different every week, because I don't want my audience to say, oh, here he goes again saying the exact same thing. However, first of all, not everyone can make every class, but also there is value in consolidating and reaffirming some of the things we've talked about in the past. I very often say things like, well, we did a class on that before, versus, so I'm not going to talk about it now, versus building it in. And when I think about it, I get my little ego red alert going off saying, Coach, stop trying to do something different every day. There is some value in doing the same thing every once in a while. So appreciate it, Tosh. All right. Thanks, Karina. Always great to have you here. I'll do another 5. Jen, is that a question? Yep. Jen, you got the mic.
I agree. I agree with Taj. I think that's a great idea. Plus, it'll force you to write it, which is also a good thing too.
Selfishly, that is
right. I mean, so then there's that.
Yeah,
right. So that's my 2 cents.
That's right. I appreciate it. I always do try to keep, that's one of the many things I've learned from Megan and Charlie from Next Jump. And I know a lot of you do their leadership in practice class. I'm a coach. I run a nonprofit. A lot of what I dedicate my life to is helping other people. But I love their philosophy of better me, better you equals better us, and not losing track of being selfish. And writing the book is something I want to do for myself, and finding a way to help you all, but at the same time help myself. Yes, my selfish reason is it will force me to write it, because I made the decision to do this week, and it forced me to write. Whereas the last 3 weeks before this, I barely wrote anything, and I saw that kind of getting away from me. So I said, you know what? If you want to actually do some writing, why don't you make the decision to write something that you have to read to the group? And now you're kind of screwed if it's Wednesday night at 10 p.m. and you got nothing written. You got to stay up till 1 and make sure you got something that you're going to be proud of and feel comfortable reading to the group. So So yeah, definitely. I think it's a good thing to think about in your parenting. It's something that we talked about in our small group workshop is when you parent or when you coach, were you doing that lesson for yourself or for your child? There's nothing wrong with doing it for yourself. So we use the example of the classic sport dad who's kind of yelling at his kid from the sideline, coaching from the sideline. And on the one hand, it's easy to say that's a bad thing. Let the coaches coach. Keep your mouth shut. The kid doesn't like it. On the other hand, there is the selfish side of it. It's not fun to sit there quietly. It's fun to cheer. Not for everybody, but for some people, and we shouldn't say sport dads. I've seen plenty of moms who are the loudest voice in the room. Moms and dads love to cheer for their kids. And I don't feel that parents should absolutely sacrifice that joy that they take out of cheering loudly and yelling at their kid in a positive way, I hope. What I do encourage is to make it clear to the child that you're doing it for yourself, right? So instead of making it, one thing I said in the small group workshop is the worst thing you can do is when you act like you're helping somebody, but they don't want the help. So you're acting like you're coaching for the child's benefit, but the child says, but I don't want to be coached from the sideline. Well, then the approach is, well, then you know what? I'm going to try to do it less, but I'm not going to stop altogether because I love it. I just love cheering and yelling. And maybe that's not right. But for me, selfishly, I want to cheer and yell and be a loud voice. That's who I am. Right? So I think when you're being selfish, there's nothing wrong with being selfish as a parent. The parent-child relationship goes both ways. The coach-player relationship goes both ways. Both sides have to be happy. Your parenting style should not be 100% sacrificial. Everything I do is for my child. That's easy to say. It sounds great, but you're going to burn yourself out, and it's going to and then things start happening bad without you even realizing it. A lot of what you do as a parent should be done for yourself, because parenting should be one of the greatest joys in life. And the important thing, though, is to identify when you're parenting selfishly and when you're parenting for your child's benefit, and to let your child know at times, sorry, that was for me. All right, we're going to do this activity because I want to do it, and later we're going to do something you want to do. But it's worse to say, like, we're going to go camping because you love camping, and the child says, no, I don't. I hate camping. Well, there's nothing wrong with saying we're going camping because I love camping. I know you don't love it, but we do a lot of things for you, and we go camping once a year for me. Child can then wrap their head around it and say, you know what, Dad? Let's go camping because you love it. Versus, we've been doing this for you, and the kid says, well, how could you know me so little to think that you're doing it for me? I hated it. I've always hated it, and I just never told you because you love it so much. That's when there's tension, and that's when things get ugly. Anyways, another thought popping out from a little comment, and I'll give the clock another 5-second clock. Happy to stay around. Happy to stay on free until 3, so I'm always happy to stick around. I like the 5-second shot clock because it forces people to, as we say in basketball, put up or shut up. So 5 seconds. If anyone has a question or comment, jump in. If not, I'll see you next week. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining.
That's good, Mackie. Thanks.